I will tell you one thing though. I am ready to learn, and it's what an absolute honor to have you here.
Thank you.
It is unbelievable when we say you, Ernesto-Perez Carrillo Sr.
Junior.
Okay, so you're junior.
I'm junior. Yeah, senior.
Well, Ernie.
Ernie's the third.
Ernie's the third. Okay,
Right.
so he sent me your phone number today, and it said senior, so I'm messing it up. Okay, so the second.
The second, yes.
Ernesto, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I've heard a lot about your operation, your store here, and I'm very impressed with what you guys are doing here. So I congratulate you and the family, because this is really and seeing the expansion. I like to see that when it's finished. Let's just put it that way.
And that we will. We were pushing for it to be here while you were here. We were trying to push that out, but hey, it's construction in Frisco.
So
it's construction,
right?
It's construction in Frisco. That's just how it works. But no, that being said, we have you in here. I didn't want to throw you under the bus. We didn't anticipate really going live on this, so we're going to make it a little bit easier. But
you guys are doing a beautiful job. So
yes, First Caliber, remodeling, construction, Frisco-based, incredible set of GCs, and they know what they're doing. They are absolutely professional, and they get the stuff done. So check that as well. Ernesto, talking about getting stuff done, will you just give us a quick synopsis of what your history is? Because you've got a tremendous history of tobacco in your family.
Yes.
Generations.
Yes.
And can we just start kind of at your very beginning, because it wasn't originally going to be in tobacco?
No, originally, my dream was always to be a jazz drummer, and ever since I was, I guess I could say 15, this was my passion. Playing the drums. I used to play like in local bands, rock bands, pop bands, Latin bands. But my dream was always to be a jazz drummer. I had some people I looked up, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a jazz drummer. So in 1976, I decided to move to New York and give my shot at it. And so I was in New York. I was working at Nat Sherman's on 55th and 5th. Okay, and he had a beautiful shop at that time.
It's gone now, right?
Yeah, it is.
Unfortunately.
Gone. Yeah. Well, this was the, I think it was the original.
Okay.
The first one he had. And then I worked there, and I used to go out at nights and do gigs and that type of stuff. Do gigs on the weekends. And then one night I'm sitting in at this club, and Stan Getz walks in. So I didn't even think about him being there. I didn't really recognize him. And when I finished, he asked me if I wanted to audition, that he was looking for a Cuban drummer. So I said, yeah, sure, of course. So that weekend I drove down to his home. He had this beautiful home outside New York City. And it's funny because, once I had my drums set up, and, he was there, the piano player, the bass player. And he said, okay, let's just jam. And for some reason, man, I couldn't hear the music.
Was it the pressure?
Yeah. It was just like being there. I finally recognized this is my big opportunity. I got to do the best that I can. But at that moment, it was just like I couldn't think. I couldn't hear the music. So like a few bars in, he said, look, let's relax, We're just jamming. We're not, don't overthink this. So we started again, and the same thing happened. So he said, you know what? Let's just stop. And then he took me aside. And he said, I understand you've been here for a few months. I think you need to be here a while in New York City. Go out and sit in with people like you did at the night I saw you. And, maybe down the road we can, sit down again. But, that was kind of an eye-opener, because I thought to myself, maybe I'm not meant to be a drummer. At that time, my father had come down sick. So, one day my mother calls me and she says, your father is sick. We want you to come down. And he has an opportunity to sell the business. And there was a group, I don't know if you recall Royal Jamaican, used to make cigars in Jamaica, and they wanted to buy him out. So he asked me, he said, come down, to the meeting with me because I don't speak that well English, so you can translate. So we're down there, and they're talking about what they want to do with the brand, how much they're going to offer him. At that time, it was I think it was like $125,000, which was a lot of money
in the late 70s.
And there's 70, there was 77 more or less, 76, mid 76. And halfway through that meeting, I said to him, I started thinking about all the effort that not only him but the family, my wife, she was his first employee outside the one cigar maker that he had. And I started thinking about that, and I said, you know what? To myself, I said, I don't think he should sell. So I called him over and I said, can I speak to you a minute? So we stepped outside, and I basically told him, look, Dad, I don't want you to sell the business. And he looked at me. He says, Ernesto, you love music. That's your passion. And this is the type of business where it's work 24/7. You see me, you see your mother. And it's something that, if you don't want me to sell, I won't. But you need to commit to doing this. This has to become your new passion. And I thought about it for 2 seconds. I said, it's done. So we go back.
So did you manufacture the passion in that moment and decide, that's it?
No. The passion, unfortunately, I'll tell you where the passion came in. Because we all know working with one's father is not the easiest thing in the world. I mean, my kids will tell you that. I'm sure
No, Ernie and Lisette have only said that
I know they have,
easy
but
to work with.
No, believe me, it's not as easy as it seems. Yeah, I'm not easy to work with, period. So, but in any case, so I started. I said, okay, look, let's do this. So. Unfortunately, he started getting sicker. He had ALS, and in 1980 he passed away. So I took over the little factory. We had like 10 cigar makers at the time, and I think my passion really started. Once I was in there by myself, that I knew, I wasn't going to be a drummer. I wasn't going to be a musician. I didn't like anything else, and it just started growing me. The tobacco thing. The blends, because at that time there were probably about maybe 15, 20 chinchales in Miami, and everybody was basically working with the same tobaccos, the same blends, more or less, because the tobacco that we have nowadays, at that time there was only like Dominican, Brazil Matafina, and maybe Cameroon and Connecticut Shade. So once I was there and saw what this industry was about. Because during that time, the cigar makers that we had were all from Cuba, and there were people that were in their 70s or 80s, and you saw, the love that they had in making cigars. How they would be sure that each cigar was as perfect as possible. I think that's one of the things that when I'm making cigars in the factory, I go back to that era, to that time. And I saw the amount of love and passion that they put into making those cigars. And that's why, I try to instill in our workers. So I started, working, kind of looking for new blends with what tobacco was available.
And at this time, your factory's in Miami.
In Miami,
You're kind of stuck doing the same blends as everyone else, same tobacco. It's different little factory. And what is the name of it? What did you say?
El Crédito.
El Crédito.
El Crédito, yeah.
And you had a name for the small factories.
Chinchales.
Chinchales.
Yeah, Chinchales is basically like a factory that had maybe 3 people, maybe the owner and the wife. I think the biggest one at that time had like maybe 10 cigar rollers.
Okay.
When I took it over, we had about 5 or 6, maybe a little bit more. But they would make 50 cigars, 75 cigars a day, back like they used to in Cuba. And I learned a lot about the way they used to worked during those times, there were some of them didn't use molds. They did it all by hands, and they would hold the bunch together with rubber bands, small rubber bands. Like the women wearing
Uh-huh.
their ponytails. That's what they would do the bunch, and then put those rubber bands, and they make 50 cigars, and then they would roll them. So I mean, this type of experience to me has always, somehow tried to duplicate that with the modern times and the
Mhm.
evolution that has gone on in the cigar industry. But those cigars were perfect, and so it was a learning experience for me watching these older, cigar makers, how they make cigars. It was, believe me, it was something that unfortunately that's doesn't happen nowadays so much. But it was an experience that I've always, you know, thought about that process when we make cigars nowadays.
How difficult was it for you to find that new tobacco? Was it a difficult journey, or was it just a journey that no one had decided they wanted to
Well,
do yet?
it was a difficult journey because at that time the industry, when I took it over, was not really what it is today. I think our biggest customer, we had three big customers. One was Hank Greenberg in Chicago. We used to make a Rico Habano for him.
Okay.
There was Stanley, what was his name? Well, Premier Cigars out of Philadelphia. And then there was another one out of Cherry Hill. And those were like our three biggest customers. And then, of course, we sell in the local, the
Mhm.
local cafes in Miami. But it got into me that I wanted to do something different. I wanted to, be able to differentiate myself from the other chinchales. And at that time, we were buying some tobaccos from a company called Oliva out of Tampa, Oliva Tobacco Company. And there was a gentleman there, Cucho Oliva, who was the brother of Angel Oliva. And my father used to buy the Sumatra wrapper from them. So we were using the Sumatra wrapper, but I felt that, we had to use it in different ways. And I think, two cigars that impressed me tremendously and really, changed my mind as to how I wanted to blend and how I wanted to differentiate myself from the other chinchales was when I smoked a Cuban Davidoff back in 1982.
You remember the year? You remember the moment?
Yeah, yeah,
What was
yeah.
the moment like?
It was a Dom Perignon. Well, the thing about that cigar, we had an accountant that was a great cigar smoker, and he brought me back a 5-pack from his trip to Europe. And we were sitting, I was smoking that cigar, mild, flavorful, but it had something that, when I tried to get up from my seat, I had to sit back down.
Because of the strength, the nicotine.
The nicotine, yeah. It was like a whole body experience. It was not something that you felt in the nose or the throat. It was just a whole body experience. I said, this is different. How did he achieve this? How did they achieve this? So that got my brain starting to think, how do I achieve that? And another cigar that impressed me tremendously at that time was the Hoya Monterey's, made by Villazon. Now that cigar was full body. I mean, to me, it was like, real full body. It was the Rothschilds,
Okay.
the Hoya Monterey Rothschild. So I kind of said, okay, how do I achieve that sensation of a Davidoff with the strength of a Rothschild? And that completely changed my whole thinking. I said, I got to do something that. So needless to say, I started experimenting with the tobaccos that we have to see how we can achieve something like that. So I remember the first time we visited the Olivas down in Tampa. I went with my father. We drove from Miami to Tampa. It took us like 7 hours to get there, and started looking at this Sumatra wrapper, which has been always one of my favorite rappers, all time favorite rappers. And I told my dad, we gotta use this wrapper.
Mhm.
If these people are using this wrapper, the Hoya Monterey's are using this wrapper, the punch. We got to start using more of this wrappers because before we were using Cameroon, Connecticut, and
A little bit more passive.
yes, yes. And this wrapper really brought some of that strength that I was looking for in the cigar. And that always stayed in the back of my mind. So when he passed away, the first thing I did was go to Tampa and I said, I want to use this wrapper exclusively. And that kind of started setting us apart from what everybody else was doing.
Wow.
So it was, it was a very, how can I put this? It was a very, I guess, challenge to me to see how we could be something that was going to be different. Not thinking that we would one day go nationally or anything like that. Just to compete with the local markets.
So what does it feel like to go with compete with the local market to now an international brand? Do you ever pinch yourself and go, holy shit, I did it? How do you feel? Do you feel this pride that you were able to create something, be extremely successful, sell,
Yeah.
and then start over effectively from scratch,
Right.
build it in a very short amount of time, and have an international brand? What does that feel like? How would you describe it?
Well, needless to say, I don't like to think about those things too much. I like to think of, what am I going to do next to top this? But needless to say, it's. I mean, I don't say this enough. It's something that I think that the whole family dynamics has really challenged me. I mean, my kids are constantly challenging me to do something different, to do something, to go above that where we are now. So I think the family has to do a lot with that. I want to make not only, myself proud of what I do, but also the family. And I think this has always been the determining factor on me always trying to do something that's going to outdo what we've done now.
That's one thing that I really respect from a young father to an established father
Mhm.
is you've been able to grow a business and a brand, but focused on the product.
Yes.
But you've also grown a family.
Yes.
And having developed a relationship with Lisette and Ernie, you've done a tremendous job. You and your wife have done a tremendous job of,
Yes, I
of
think
finding that balance. And you have something very special there. And of course, it's easy to get into the weeds and focus on those small things, right?
Yeah.
But if you take a step back, it's very special. Very
It
special
is.
to share it
It
with
is.
a family.
Yes, I always remember there's one picture that when we started, we took with Cigar Aficionado, where the three of us are there, and that picture, every time I look at that picture, I see what this whole thing is about.
With Lisette on the standing behind you and Ernie on the other side.
Yeah. That picture alone, tells me like, okay, this is the beginning, and hopefully this is only the beginning. So hopefully we'll take a lot more pictures like that.
Mhm.
And then we went to the first RTDA, and that was also an experience that was
Your first trade show.
my first trade show with the family. Yeah, that was an experience because I'm used to be going at trade shows with when I was with Generals, and I mean I don't want to talk about the numbers, but the numbers there were incredible. So this was like a very proud moment for me that the three of us got there, knowing the fact that the two kids each had their career and each gave up their career to do this. So that's something that it to me it says a lot about the trust and the belief in this business. And I think that alone tells you that we're going to be very successful. That we
Absolutely.
are, but we still have a lot to grow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to step all the way back. This has just been fumbling around in my mind as you've been speaking. You spoke about music, and you think of you and Avo and a dear mutual friend we have, Luciano.
Uh-huh.
And you see this element of music.
Yes.
And I wonder what your take is on how the concept of music and the concept of blending work together. Is it just purely coincidence that some of my favorite cigar makers are also musicians, or is there something that you take into your blending that you look at it almost as though you're building a song?
Very, very good question. I think, when you look at music, for instance, when I was playing the drums, I used to practice anywhere from 4 to 5 hours a day. So there's a discipline. If you want to be good, you have to practice. You have to practice constantly. You have to improvise, right?
Yeah.
You're trying to bring the different notes, of the whole, you're trying to play with the piano player, with the bass player, with the horns or whatever, and you're part of that whole thing. And with blending, to me, is that type of thing. If the bass player is off beat, or I'm off beat, or the drummer's off beat, or the piano player, plays the wrong chord, right there's going to be some type of chaos. With blending cigars, it's the same with tobacco. It's exactly the same. So
Now getting into that,
Yeah.
are you saying with tobaccos can set a beat and a rhythm, or they set almost a harmonic?
if they're not blended right, it's not gonna be harmonic. So it's like, the different chords, um, the playing in a group, that each is gonna complement the other. So with tobacco it's the same. We go through, you know, blends after blends after blends, just trying to find that harmony, I guess you could say.
Uh-huh.
And at the end of the day, I tell a lot of people, really, what's the conductor is not me. I put the notes together. The conductor is the final cigar maker that's going to make that blend come through. So if that cigar maker, for some reason, does not make the blend the way that we want it, then it's going to be off.
That's right. I wouldn't have
You know
thought
what I'm
about
saying?
it that way.
Yeah.
I would have thought, well, yes, of course you create it. You're the Beethoven. You're putting the notes on the paper.
Exactly.
But unless they follow the notes,
Unless the musicians, which is this case, I should say the musicians, is the cigar makers, it doesn't, it's not going to come together.
and that is
And each cigar, and you gotta, you gotta understand that cigar makers, people see cigar makers and they see them making cigars and they think it's the easiest thing. It's very difficult because they're the ones that are actually making the blends or making the blend that I put in front of them and make that blend happen.
Mhm.
So it's there's a lot of music, I think, in making cigars.
I agree with you.
Yes.
And there's music. If you just close your eyes in a cigar factory, and for those who are watching and listening,
Mhm.
if you ever get the chance to go to a cigar factory, go and then stand in the middle of the room and close your eyes, because there is a rhythm to it. Right?
There is.
The bunching on this side of the room, and then the Lieberman on this side of the room, and
Yeah.
the sound of the press. There is a music that
There is.
resonates even when everyone's gone.
Yes, yes. It's like you're in an empty concert hall once everybody's gone, and there's a certain feeling when you're there by yourself that I enjoy a lot. Like after everybody leaves, when I'm in the factory, I'll stay there for another half hour, an hour, whatever, and just smoke a cigar or make my own little blends or make little puritos with different tobaccos. And that's an experience that I enjoy very much. And like you say, somebody has that opportunity, they should definitely, try to do it.
Oh, it's what do you think is missing in this industry right now?
I hate to say this, but I think that somehow we need more of the tradition in the industry. I think somehow we need more of that. There's, the industry has evolved tremendously. And I think, because of the involvement, we've got so many new people smoking cigars. But I think we all need to go back to the old days, seeing how cigar makers were made. Not that we're going to make them the same way, but learn. Unfortunately, a lot of those people are gone, but learn from the greats of those days, from whoever we can, And I'm not a cigar maker, but basically when, we make a cigar or when a new roller comes in, the people that I have, I've kind of taught them how I want the cigars to be made. And I'm not going to say that everybody does it to the to the way that I like, but I think the concept, the culture, my vision of I want a cigar made is there in our factory, and it's taken me a long time because in Miami, when we had the factory in Miami, a lot of the cigar makers out there had that culture. So to bring that culture to the Dominican Republic, it's taken me a lot of time, a lot of years, but I think we've pretty much achieved it.
Mm.
So
Well, the proof is in the pudding. So I think you are in process of continuously achieving it and
yes, and
learning.
it's a never ending. It's always reminding. This is what we're about. This is the way we make cigars. Forget where you came from. If you're a cigar maker came from another factory, forget what you learned there. We're gonna, you know, we teach you. Now we like to have experienced people. We have a small school that we teach anywhere from 30 to 40 cigar makers a year. Unfortunately, not everyone stays with us, but we build little by little. We keep building our culture that way. So
Especially there's this underlying theme that began when we were speaking in the humidor,
yes,
carries to your decision to not sell the company,
right.
to take it over, to have your vision. And it seems like this theme is pride and being proud of the legacy or the tradition.
Yes. Well, we go back. On my father's side, his father and his uncle used to be cigar makers, and they didn't work in a factory. They used to get this little, cigar table, bench, and they make cigars. They go to a corner, and they make cigars in the corner. They sell it for 5, 10 cents, 15 cents, whatever they could get for it. And on my mother's side, they're from Montezuelo, which is in Pinar del Rio, near Pinar del Rio there. And there were 12 brothers, and they grew tobacco. So my grandfather grew tobacco, and my other grandfather made cigars. So there was no way I was going to do anything else but do that. It's as much as I try to get away from it, there was no way that I was going to, And I'm glad because it's something that it just keeps me every day. Every day it's just something I wake up and think about. I go to sleep thinking about blends and tobaccos and how does that tobacco going to work with this one, and always looking for new tobaccos, to come out with different blends and something that's going to be unique out there in the marketplace.
If I can ask you a bit of a difficult question here, that's kind of the almost the theme of today. What's happened with family? You start really thinking about legacy.
Right.
You start thinking about the next phases. Right. You're creating a generational business. Have you thought? Do you think about what it's going to look like when it's the next generations? Are you setting it up where you have someone who is thinking about the tobaccos before they go to sleep, playing around with the blends that are there? And how do you identify who that person is if you think about that? But where is your mindset when it comes to really fostering the next generation?
Well, we have we have we have some very good people in our company. We have right now what we're doing. We have I think you met Mikey, who used to work for Habanos, and then we have another young gentleman there, Jose Manuel, that also is working with blends. I'm letting them go out and buy tobaccos, and we have people that have been with me 25 years that also are part of you could say it's kind of a team that whenever I make blends, they're part of that blend because at the end, they're the future of the company. And then of course, I have Ernie that's also getting very much involved. Lisette that's also getting very much involved, and the aspect of the organization of the tobacco, of the blending. So, I mean, it's going to take a while, but I think that as long as I build that culture of what from the beginning, think about the tradition where we come from, learn whatever I can teach you because it's taken me 50 years and I'm still learning. So I think it's going to be in the future. I think they get the message, and I think they're going to respect what I've instilled every day in all of them about tobaccos, about blends, about aging the cigars, aging the tobacco, fermentation. It's not rocket science, but it is a science.
A science mixed with
It
an
is a
art,
science.
right? And you can do it wrong.
You can do it, and I've made plenty of mistakes. Believe me.
Forgive me for asking this question every time I see you, but it's very interesting to me because you've forgotten more about tobacco than I'll ever learn. But what is the last thing that you have learned?
The last thing that I have learned is that I still have a lot to learn. Yes, and if you just stay, if you just try to live off your present success, there's always somebody in the back that's doing what you were doing 20 years ago, and that's something that I always keep in mind. I can't stand still. I can't just say, okay, we've done this, we're set. There's no guarantee, because it's like everything, like in sports, like in music. You may be Michael Jordan, but there's a LeBron James that wants to take your spot. And this is what this is what keeps me kind of and the thing about my kids, they have that same mentality, and they can't see anything that that they think that they can achieve or do better.
Mm-hmm. And
it's a learning process. It's never, and this is what's so beautiful about this industry. You never cease to learn, because there's always somebody growing a tobacco with a different seed or a hybrid seed or a different area, and you say, hey, this is something that I need to look at, that we have to look at. So that's my thing. But one thing that I do I try to concentrate on trying to stay ahead of the game. Let's just put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And also learning from there's a lot of great manufacturers, a lot of great tobacco growers nowadays. So I try to learn from them also.
Who are some people that you look up to in this industry?
Well, I think needless to say, my father, my mother, because from the beginning I saw what they went through, and they never lost faith, and somehow they saw in me what I didn't see in me, which was my career, my passion, which is cigars and tobaccos. But there are great people out there, Orlando Padron, Carlos Fuentes, junior and senior, the Plasencias, both, the Garcia family. That to me, they're great. AJ, I mean, there's a lot of great people out there, Perdomo, and it's not just because they're making great cigars or growing great tobacco. Is because they have a vision which they follow,
Mm-hmm.
and they haven't deviated from that vision. No, they don't try to copy this guy or copy that guy. This is what we're gonna do, and this is our vision, and this is how we're gonna move forward. So, and then there's a lot of young kids coming up, in Dominican, and then I'm not too familiar with Nicaragua, but in Dominican there's a lot of great, young people that you try their cigars, you say, this is interesting. This is something that I can learn from.
Yeah.
So,
do you think about ever the amount of people that you have inspired? There's one word when Luciano chimed into our Saturday show. He said, "You're the reason why he's in this business."
well, I don't know about that. If I inspire anybody, I hope I do, but nobody has. Well, I mean, you hear these things, but I don't. I think people just, they're self-motivated. I think in any business, if you're not self-motivated, you can look up to people, but you got to motivate yourself to, to reach that status or even be greater than them.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I mean, I lived through an era that we had, going back, Rolando Reyes, Bermejo, De Oliva, the growers, Silvio Perez and Alfredo Perez. I mean, there were so many great, not only in cigar making, but also in tobacco, which ultimately they're the people that are going to bring on the new seeds and new areas, invest the money to so that you can do and experiment with new tobaccos. So they're a very important part of this industry. We just don't make cigars if they wouldn't have the tobaccos to make those special blends that we're looking for.
Right.
So,
and it all traces to your initial vision in, what was it, 1988?
no,
Is that when you smoked that?
1982, yeah.
1982.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
smoked that, and just everything that you're saying. I want a full-bodied, full-strength cigar that has nuance and flavor and balance.
Yes.
And it just,
Yes.
I see that as the epicenter of vision. And
Right.
then you have your own push that takes
Exactly.
you to where you're going. And that is very, very special.
Yeah,
to watch.
that's kind of the base. We need a base on everything. You need some type of how you say a something to start from, and those two cigars were kind of what set me on that thing. And if you look at it now, we made a Ricobano back in 90. Well, the first time I started working with Nicaraguan tobacco was back in early 90s. And what happened was the Perez family, they were growing wrappers in Nicaragua. And I'd always liked Nicaraguan tobaccos because I used to, the Fuentes had a cigar called Flor de Orlando when they were made in Nicaragua. That was, also an exceptional cigar. So I always wanted to use some of that Nicaraguan tobacco. So the Perez family, when I said, when they decided to move their wrapper operation to Ecuador, I asked them to grow some Nicaraguan tobacco for me. So I remember, they one day they called me and said, Ernesto, we have your tobacco. Now I was expecting, 10, 15 bales, 20 bales. No, they offered me 100 bales. So I had to take down. I said, well, you know what? Now I'm really
now you're invested.
Now I'm really invested in this. And that's when I really started getting into the Nicaraguan tobaccos. And the Dominican tobaccos, we've always been using the Pilotos Cubanos from Dominican. As a matter of fact, one of those, when we did La Gloria Cubana, it was predominantly Dominican tobaccos and Brazil tobacco, Mata Fina. This was back in the early 80s. And in 1990, when I got this tobacco, then we came out with a Ricobano, the new Ricobano, all Nicaraguan tobacco with a Sumatra wrapper. And then we started incorporating that tobacco also in La Gloria Cubana and the CVR. And I think that's what, really started getting us some notoriety. I think the Ricobano at that time in La Gloria Cubana was considered like full body, real full body.
And then here comes the CVR.
Yes. And that, that completely, made that brand grow tremendously because of the ring gauge and also because of the blends. So.
Well, Ernesto, I could literally sit here and talk to you on camera for about 6 hours, and I would be happy to do so. But I don't want to hog all of your time. I want to split you off here a little bit. But what an honor it is to have you in our building, to welcome you to our family, and to celebrate the first time that you're here. Most certainly not the last.
For sure. For sure.
Ernesto.
And thank you. My kids watch your podcast all the time, and they say that, you got to listen to that. I say, if I'm going to do it, I don't want to be influenced by any of the other guys that have been here. So I'm not going to watch any of the podcasts. But
you're not going to get any smarter because of it, I promise you.
No, but I hear they're very, very good. You guys done a great job with the people that have come here. So I'm honored to be here, and like I said, be for the first time, and again, not for the last.
That's it. Well, let's go get some food.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you
we
very
appreciate
much.
it. Come in, check us out tomorrow. We are doing Owner Spotlight official launch. We're going to be doing something similar to this, and you get your chance to connect with Ernesto here. It is not often that we get to share a moment like this, and we're going to take it all in. So thank you guys. Appreciate you joining us, and see you tomorrow.
Thank you.